Okay, just documenting. I'm not going to do much technical teaching here, but just documenting my 18,600 mile oil change. Let's get that in focus. You can see I'm at 18,300. I had my 14,000 done right at 14. Other than the state of California, which I'm in, the service schedule changed every 4,600 miles. I'm going to follow that service schedule. The only reason they say not in California is due to EPA, not because we have special air or special air water or roads or anything. Anyway, so I'm doing it 300 miles early, which is fine, but I'm documenting it, just a little touch. I'm not stripping off all the panels. I've learned to be able to remove that mid panel is easy without removing all that other stuff. See my battery change video. I have removed this panel and a screw in the fin. So now I'm going to remove this panel, and I'm going to remove the bottom sub panel. And like a lot of people who leave it off, I don't. It's not that big a deal. So I'm going to remove that, and then we'll dump the oil and continue. So while doing my 18,600 service, I pulled my plugs. This time, no set screw and no metal. Well, there was a tiny little flake on there, but probably from all the work they had to do to rip that whole thing apart and get that set screw back in on that oil passage. And then here is the sump drain. Now I bought these gold plugs, and as you can see, this is the engine one. Looking at it, you go, no way that's going to fit. Well, it is the same thread, but as you can see, it's a lot taller than the stock one. I'm going to stick with the stock one in the motor. My 2011 already had a magnet on it, right? And with this being that much taller, it's going to go up into the engine higher and may not catch any metal because it's not sitting as low as it could in the engine crankcase area. And as you can see, the magnet itself sticks up a lot higher. So I'm sticking with the stock one. I'm not having any issue with this stripping or torquing it down or anything. But I'm just saying, I'm just going to stick with it. If I ever do strip it, I know how to get it out, and I'll switch back. But the sump one, as you can see, I am going to go with. It is taller, but since the sump has no magnet anyway, and this one has one, nothing to lose. So I will be using the gold plug sump. By the way, this is a 2011 RT, so people know. It does not have the part number on it. Isn't that interesting? Oh well, I'd give it to you if I had the part number on it, but it doesn't have one. So I'm going to go with that, but for the engine, I'm sticking with the stock one and just replace the crush washers. All right, so on with the oil change. By the way, another little topic. So the stock one just has a crush washer, but it's got a small head. The gold plug has a very large head and comes with a big washer. Now, when I put this washer on here, there is a little bit of gap around the threads and where it seats. I'm debating whether to use it or not. If you look, the crush washer goes fine. Let me put it on. As you see, the crush washer goes on just like it does on the stock plug, a little wobbly. I don't think I'm going to use that washer. I don't see a reason for it. Just because the head's bigger doesn't mean anything. So I'm going to pass on the washer and just go with the standard crush washer that you use when you change your oil on this plug, and not use the other washer. I don't see a reason for it. And having two washers stacked is never a good thing, unless one's a lock washer. But so I'm going without. By the way, one more thing on the stock crankcase or engine plug versus the gold plug I was thinking about. Let's say this is designed so when it threads in, there's no threads on the inside of the crankcase exposed. Let's say it goes in fairly flush, or maybe one thread, and this whole magnet sticks up, right? Well, something I noticed about these gold plugs is because of the heavy-duty magnet, they're magnetic all on the whole thing, including the threads. So my thought is, if this is sticking way up in the engine, and if you get any metal debris and it gets in the threads, when you go to unscrew this from your engine, it could cause you to gall the threads coming out. So I'm not convinced that gold plug, even though it gets rid of the hex wrench instead of that, I'm not convinced that's the way to go. If they had one that was the same length as the stock BRP one, I'd probably go with it. But it concerns me that there could be threads sticking up in the engine, and because now the whole thing's magnetic, that metal filings get in there, and when you go to remove this, it could cause a problem. Not saying it will, and I'm sure many people will post and say, never had a problem. I'm not digging it. So again, I'm sticking with the stock one for the motor. By the way, one more comment. Someone might say that, hey, Bob, your theory about length on the motor, well, isn't that going to be the same for the sump since it's longer? Not so much. Let me explain why. Your motor's aluminum. Getting any metal in those threads will definitely could gall the threads. The sump is steel. It's going to be not as a big a problem with that. So I'm going to go with it. So you might say, well, if you're not going to do one, why do the other? I'm just saying it's steel. It's going into steel, not into aluminum. Thinking that may not be near as much of a problem or worry. One thing for sure, I'd hate to strip my motor versus strip the sump. As far as if it did happen, sump's easier to change and not as expensive. Anyway, final comment on the gold plugs. Okay, oil change done. Now just a couple of things. I have an SM. So, you know, what I do is I put in 4 quarts. Manual says put in 3.5, start it and go from there. I put in 4, bring it up to temp, and I had a little bit on the stick once I checked the oil after I shut it down, once it was up to temp. So I wind up adding about 1/2 of a quart to bring it up to the correct level. Anyway, all done. Everything went great. One thing I'd like to say is what I do is I put the oil, my wife and I drink a lot of ginseng tea, and it just so happens that 5-gallon jug will hold all of the old oil. And what I do is I take it to an oil recycling place and keep the environment clean. So I recommend you all do that. All right. I always check my oil pan after changing the oil, make sure I'm not seeing anything odd that I shouldn't see. Put that away. And we're done. Basically, if I backed out my sit around time, get on Facebook time, and all that kind of crap, I basically did my oil change in 30 minutes. The longest time was getting the panels off, and I have a trick where I show just removing the mid panel on the other side, of course. But then you got to remove that lower one to get at the filter and the bottom thing, and you know, removing the panels and put them back on took longer than the oil change. Anyway, I'm good to go for the next 4,600 miles. By the way, one last thing I do is after an oil change, man, why isn't that coming in? Sometimes, there we go. After an oil change, I set trip B to 0, and I use trip B to track when I need my next oil change. Now, hopefully I don't accidentally ever reset it or anything like that, but that's what I've been doing, and that's how I track. I also keep a log and track the bottom number, but trip B gives me an idea, so I don't have to calculate it in my head. Just something I do. All right, so just a tip, and finishing off with the oil change and service. By the way, some other things I did: check the belt tension using the Cricut 2. It hasn't changed in, my God, forever. Check my my pads. They still got plenty of life, although the rear will probably need to be changed probably, I'm guessing, in another 5K, maybe the next oil change. I might do it. Other than that, everything's been great on this one. You know, the 14,000 is the big service, and this one's basically just an oil change and check some stuff. Anyway, later.